welcome everybody to this virtual open day on the MRes Biosciences at UCL. We obviously going to take you through the overview of the program and go into some of the details, and we'll include some of the some points will deal with admissions as well, and applications. So just to let you know, introduce myself. So I'm Professor David Murrell. I am Professor of Theoretical Biology in the Research Department of Genetics, Evolution and Environment. So there's some information there about me. On the right-hand side, I have a QR code again for the MRes program, and that's the program that I lead. So as you will see, there's a lot of other professors involved in running the MRes program. But I sort of have the overview and hopefully manage to keep everything going well for all the tutors and for all the students. So just to cover some of the reasons why you would like, or why the MRes Biosciences program at UCL is a really good program for you to apply. Well, as hopefully most of you are aware, that UCL is already a world-leading academic institute, and this is especially true for biosciences research. The MRes Biosciences is a program that is designed to get students ready for a PhD. So if you think you'd like to do a PhD and you kind of know the sorts of things you'd like to research, then I think this is the ideal program for you. And actually, I've yet to see another program that has the same structure that we do. And the reason for this is that our year really tries to mimic the first year of a PhD. And this does so by concentrating, as you'll see, concentrating on the research project. And therefore, you get to experience the ups and also some of the downs of research. But I would emphasize that there are more ups than downs. So, as as a core part of this program, then you have a research project where you're embedded within a laboratory within mostly within the Division of Biosciences, but pretty much anywhere within UCL is fine. And here you'll spend 4 to 5 days of the week working on your project. And this project lasts for 10 months. So usually starts in October, shortly after students arrive. And the deadline for submission of the written dissertation is usually at the end of August. So you have a very long period of time to be able to do your research. And this means you can do some really cutting edge science that you wouldn't be able to do within the usual 8 to 12 week that many master's programs offer. And the program, because of the way it's structured, it has got a really high reputation for excellence across the world. And most of our students that we're able to track, most of our students go on to start a PhD within 2 years of finishing. So some will be able to sort out a PhD within the year of the MRes, and some will be applying and actually get their PhD sorted out the year after. Now, of course, not every student goes on to do a PhD because they might not want to, they might change their mind. And many of the other students will go into industry and work in industry rather than academia. As you're hopefully aware, but if you hit that QR code, you'll end up on on the page that looks like the picture on the left here. That's our landing page, and you'll see a list on the left-hand side, which is repeated on the right-hand side, and the program is broken up into a number of different streams or pathways that have specializations in still quite broad topics such as cell biology, computational biology and various types of neuroscience, etc. So you can see there's a really wide range of areas here because the Division of Biosciences is a very large division that includes many different professors that work on many different topics that run from molecules to ecosystems, basically. And so you should be able to find at least one of these streams that would be of interest to you. And when students arrive, they are signed up to one of these streams. Many of the parts of the program are the same for all different streams. And it's really the project where the key differences occur. So to go into the program structure a little bit in a bit more detail, they say the research project is the real core of the program. So it's 120 out of the total of 180 credits. And that runs from October until the end of August. And I'll go into how research projects are organized later on, but you'll also see here that there's some modules. Those ones in green are the compulsory skills modules that every student on the program does. And then the other final, the fourth subject module, is one that is optional and that's chosen from, well, you have to choose a module from our prospectus, from our list of modules that are available within UCL. And this means you'll be able to take a module in a topic very strongly related to your project, but which will cover information and material that you won't have covered before. So that's the overall structure. And again, as you can see, the research project really dominates this program structure. So again, just to reiterate, UCL Biosciences is a World Centre for Excellence in Bioscience Research. The division itself is really split into four different research departments, and you'll see how they align with the different streams. But actually, as I say, your supervisor for your project can be taken beyond the division and also anywhere within the division as well. So it's not a strict rule that you have to be in the same research department that leads on your stream. And as our dean, Professor Pomiankowski, makes the point on the homepage, our division covers all bioscience research from molecules to ecosystems. So it's almost impossible for a student to come along and not find a research group that is doing this type of research that you're interested in. So the division is broken into four research departments, and notionally, the streams are kind of looked after by professors within those research departments. So we have cell and developmental biology, and here the professors that run the stem cell and developmental genetics and the vertebrate form and function and evolution and cell biology streams. They are found here. But as I say, you don't have to do a project within this department if you are one of those in one of those streams. You can choose a project, organize a project elsewhere if it still fits within, say, the cell biology stream. So we also have my department, which is genetics, evolution, and environment. And here we run the biology of aging and aging related disease, as well as computational biology and the evolution and origins of life streams. Uh, Thirdly, we have the neuroscience, physiology, and pharmacology department. And as expected, then the streams related to neuroscience are run by professors in this department. Finally, we have structural and molecular biology as the fourth department within the division of biosciences. And here we have the biochemistry and molecular biology, as well as the structural biology and biophysics streams. So as I say, we have a number of different streams here, and you should be able to find at least one which you would be interested in joining. Now, I've mentioned quite a lot about the research project, but now turn and go to this specifically and go into quite a lot more detail. So again, students are embedded within a single lab for 1 year. So your project, you have one project for the whole year. Although within that project, there may be different aspects to it, but you stay with the same lab for the whole year, basically. And your you will be contributing to the research at UCL and within the Division of Biosciences. And you'll be doing so because by having such a long period of time and being like a first year PhD student, you will have a chance to really tackle some cutting edge scientific questions using some cutting edge methods and to produce some novel research. And this is why I think the MRes Biosciences program is really an ideal way to get ready for a PhD. But which something which is maybe less obvious at the start is the fact that because you're in the same laboratory group for the whole year, you will be surrounded by the same people, the same master's students, PhD students, postdoctoral workers, and supervisors for that whole year. So you'll be able to build really strong relationships with those people. And in so doing, you'll pick up lots of information. Some of this will be scientific knowledge and details about methodology. But also, for example, you'll be able to talk to the PhD students who will recently have been through the PhD process and will be able to give you tips about the PhD process itself. And that's also true for the postdoctoral workers. So you'll get a strong understanding about a career in, say, academia and certainly within science by talking to these people, as well as picking up lots of information and knowledge about the science that you're doing. All our students will have regular meetings with their supervisors, normally on top of this. So these meetings are often one-to-one, but on top of this, you'll be involved in regular lab group meetings. So many lab groups will have weekly or bi-weekly meetings where the whole group comes and discusses their individual work in front of everybody, so everybody can contribute to everybody else's project. And this is a really valuable way of having input into your science to improve your science and give you more information. So we often have some questions relating to the research project that revolve around how these are organized. So in particular, students often ask, how do I organize or how do I choose a research project? Now, it's really important for me to point out that we do not generally provide a list of projects that you have to choose from. So, for example, we do not say, here's a list of 10 projects, you have to choose one of those, because simply that might not mean there's a project in that list that matches up with your particular interests. So, what we do is we get students to talk to professors to organize their research project between them and the professors. So usually this is done when students arrive at the end of September, but we do recommend that students look through the Division of Biosciences web pages to find potential research groups that are doing the type of research that you're interested in. Now, you don't do this on your own. With each stream, we have a stream tutor, and they will sit down with you when you arrive and discuss your interests and the types of questions and methods you'd like to follow and pursue within your project. So, from that discussion, usually what happens is a number of different names of potential supervisors will be mentioned, and then the student goes and contacts those professors usually to see if they will be able to house you or host you for a project. So this means you go and you have a chance to meet the lab and the lab group members, which is really important because you're going to be there for for 10 months. And makes it very hard to do online. It's always better to do in person. So this is why we highly recommend students arrive and then arrange their project. So this is proceed to negotiations. So where both the student and the supervisor discuss what would be of interest to them, and obviously the research will match up with research that's ongoing in the research group, but it also needs to meet with the student interests as well. Because you might want to talk to more than one professor, this can take 1 or 2 weeks. Sometimes, rarely, it might take 4 or 5 weeks. But it's really important that you get the right project for you because you'll be doing this project for the rest of the year. And so I don't think there's any problem if it takes 4 weeks because you still have until the end of August. And this to me is one of the key selling points for the project because, or sorry, for the biosciences program, because we do not give you a list to choose from. You get this bespoke project that really matches your needs. We have literally hundreds of professors in the division and throughout UCL that are there ready to take on master students like yourself, and we will help pin down the exact project supervisor for you that really matches your interests in both the questions and the methods you would like to use and develop. Another question relating to the project often revolves around how much time should I spend on my project? Well, as I said, the project accounts for 120 credits, which is two-thirds of the final mark. So it's already a big chunk of your mark. And the thing with research is the more you put into it, the more you get out. So we tend to expect you to work like a PhD student, which means 9 to 5 typically, or the equivalent of most days of the week. So this will be 4 to 4.5 days of the week because you do have those other modules as well. Um, the project does not run to term time, so you do not have like 3 blocks of 10 weeks. You would work like a PhD student, so you can work outside of term time. But of course, like a PhD student, like anybody else working full time, you are entitled to holidays. Students will go away at the Christmas break and also at the Easter break as well, typically for a week or two. But outside of that, usually we expect you to work much like a PhD student and work on your project most of the time. So that's a lot more detail on the project, and we have those three compulsory skills modules, which everybody on the course, no matter which stream they're on, will be doing all of three modules. So the first of these, which runs in the first term, is called the scientific literature. And the aim here is to develop skills required for the acquisition and management of information from the scientific literature, but also it focuses on the publication process. So hopefully, at some point in the near future, you will be producing science that will be written up into a research paper. And it's really useful to know how that publication process works. So this will involve both the review process and also the submission process as well. So part of the assessments will be on a detailed critique or a peer review of a paper relevant to your project. And then we also have two other assessments where you'll be writing summaries because summaries and abstracts are really key components that are easy to get wrong or not optimize. So it's really good to practice those sorts of skills. The second module actually runs in term three. It's run by Professor Matt Gold, and this focuses more on communication of science. So here, the assessments will be a video log or vlog, which focuses on your project, but also a poster, which will also present the work from your project. And because this is in term three, most students will have some results by then. And so this is good practice because particularly in the early part of your scientific career, you might go to conferences where you'll be able to give a poster presentation. And also the video log is important because it's a method of communicating your science to a broader audience, usually non-scientists as well as scientists. So these are incredibly important skills to have going forward. The third module that we run within the program is the Biosciences Research Seminars module, which is run by Arantxa Barrios. And this has a list of research seminars across the whole of the division where you go along and you attend the seminar, you take notes, and then the assessments are based upon attending these seminars and writing up and producing also internet sort of pages for a newsletter, which is based on those seminars or one of those seminars and is aimed at the non-expert. So again, these are communication skills which are really important to be able to communicate science to the broadest audience possible, because we really hope that at some point in the near future, perhaps hopefully by the end of your MRes, you'll have some really exciting science to talk about and to disseminate to the broadest audience possible. So that's the overall structure of the course. I'm hoping you will all want to still be applying to the program. And so we'll just turn now briefly to admissions. So it's worth pointing out we don't have an application fee for this program. There's a lot of information that you have to submit, which will obviously include your transcripts that are available up till now. You'll need to list referees and be mindful that referees can sometimes slow down the submission process if they are slow to respond to the requests for the referee. So um, communicate with your referees that they are going to be asked very shortly to be to provide their references for you. Once this information is in, UCL admissions checks everything is in place and runs a number of other checks, and this can take 1 or 2 weeks as well. And the whole point of me saying this is that although you might submit, say this week, in terms of me and the tutors assessing the application, it probably takes about 3 weeks or sometimes even 4 weeks, depending on the time of year, to get through to us to check. So there will be a slight delay. So if you apply and you haven't heard anything for 1 or 2 weeks, don't worry, that's perfectly normal, and we will get back to you as soon as we can. We then review the application, so that'll be both myself and the tutors associated with the relevant stream that you've applied to. And then we will have a discussion, which we call an interview, with those students we think are suitable for the course. And so really, as I say, this is a discussion more than an interview. We're looking to have a discussion where you are able to provide us evidence that you have the basic skills to get started in the desired project. And we take everything into account for this. So it needs to be our decisions are based upon both your grades, referees' reports, your experience. Perhaps you've done some internships, and also in particular, any skills you've had that are relevant to the project type that you're interested in doing. For those that might need more lab skills, research skills to get going, then we would typically advise an MSc might be better for you, or if you lack much of the background in the topic. So, for example, if you want to do something in neuroscience, but you haven't got a strong neuroscience background in terms of number of modules that you've taken, it's probably more appropriate that you do an MSc where you have more taught modules in neuroscience before you do the project. But most of our applicants are aware of this and have a good research skills. So it's just in your application, you just need to highlight those relevant research skills. So in the application, you'll have a cover letter, and please, we ask you to be very clear with all this as much as possible, because we get over 200 applications and it takes a long time to go through. So it's make it as easy for us to read and get the information as possible is really useful. So you need to state briefly why you're interested in the topic. And really, what's also really important is to state what type of research project you'd like to do. We don't need an essay on this, but just an idea of the sort of research you'd like to do during your MRes. This helps us decide whether we can find a supervisor for you. Summarize your relevant experience. This will also be in your CV, but you can give a little bit more detail. Again, we do not need an essay here. We just need to see that you've got this relevant experience. And then it's also helpful if you can suggest potential supervisors. This does not mean you are restricted to these people, but it just helps give us an idea of the type of research that you're interested in. And again, keep this brief to within 1 page if possible, because we get a lot of applications. And if you write 5 pages, we might miss the crucial information. Okay, so it's about you making sure we see the crucial information. And that is not by writing as much as possible, it's by making the important bits stand out. Scholarships, we have some scholarships that are available, mostly to UK-based students, but there are some other possibilities available too. Typically, these have a deadline of June, and in order to get one of these scholarships, then you would need to have an offer of a place on the course. So in this case, in particular, we do advise you um, to apply for the program earlier, much earlier, because then you can have this offer in place and still have time to apply for a scholarship. There's also student funding pages on UCL, and I think this information is still available. Obviously, it's going to be different to this page here. This is a snapshot that I took from last year, but it gives you an indication that there's also potential scholarships and funding for overseas students to be able to at least partly offset some of the costs of doing the MRes program and living in London. So just to come back to the program and the excellence of the program. So each program at UCL and every other university will have an external examiner that looks at the quality and assesses the quality of the program. And our current external examiner is very impressed with what we do and has said that they have seen some excellent research project dissertations covering a broad range of topics, and that critically, many of the students performed at a level already comparable to PhD students. And this is what we promote within the program. We're trying to make it as much use and as similar to the first year of a PhD as possible. So this should really give you a kickstart to your career and really help launch you into a PhD going forward. Our students, generally speaking, are extremely happy with their experience, and we have some testimonials which are available on the webpage. And often the feedback we get is that they really appreciate the ability to choose a project that they're interested in, and because it runs for the whole year, they're able to feedback and into that project, take ownership of the project, and drive it forward in the directions that they see are most interesting. And this gives them a sense of ownership of the research because they are the ones doing it and they're the ones that are able to drive it forward. And again, this is exactly the same as a PhD. So that's it for the information. I leave the QR code up again if you want to go to the Biosciences web page for this MRes. I am very happy to now answer any questions you have, and you can either ask them in the chat or you can turn on your audio and video if you like and ask questions that way. So, do we have any questions? I can't find my question. There's the bar gone. Oh, yeah.
Yes, I have a question. Uh,
Hi, thank you. Yes.
I was wondering, so you said there are like up to 200 applications each year. So how
Hmm.
many do get accepted then? Like,
Yeah. So, for example, this year we have 41 students. We don't have across, and that's across all the streams. We don't have a quota, so that's not the maximum number. We could go higher, but it depends on the students, which, making sure that we get students who are applying for projects that we can run within UCL. So, um, most of the time, there's a minimum requirement in terms of grades, and sometimes those who apply don't achieve those minimum requirements in the grades. Otherwise, it really comes down to the research experience. If you had can demonstrate you've got research skills, that maybe you've done a research project at the undergraduate level or an internship, then and those skills are relevant to the type of project, then that's usually a good sign.
all right, thank you very much.
So, Vigila, hopefully I haven't mispronounced your name too badly. Could you clarify whether all applications are evaluated with equal consideration throughout the application cycle, or if applying earlier improves the likelihood of admission? So, yes, thank you. That's a good question. So, we do because we do not have a number, a quota. It's not. Uh, it's not sort of critical to apply now. It doesn't mean to say you won't get in if you apply later. So it's not a big problem in that term. I think always be mindful that if you're an overseas student, you have to apply for visas, and this can take a number of weeks. We do have applications that close to hopefully allow for that still to happen, but I would advise applying earlier than the deadline, the end deadline for applications, because then you know what you're doing. You're not having to wait on the system to deal with your application and give you a good time to get your visa. And so I'd advise people to not leave it too late, but you can apply at any point in that cycle, and all applications are treated equally throughout that application cycle. Any more questions?
There's another one in the chat from Rashita.
Oh, okay, yeah, thank you. Is there a provision for students to change their supervisor 1 month after 1 month or so if there are any serious problems with the selected project? Um, so I have been running the course for 5 years, and I think in that time we probably had about 200 students, and I can only think of one occasion where a student has decided they would like to change project. So it can happen, but it's very rare. Um, and I think most of the time, so therefore, almost all of the time, students will get a project that they're really interested in. And because you have that period at the start, where we discuss with you your interests and find a supervisor that's really aligned with your interests and what you like to do, that really minimizes the chances that you need to change or want to change project. And also, if you come along in person and visit the supervisor and the lab, then you will also get a feeling for whether that's the right sort of lab for you. So, for example, I think it's really important to decide whether you'd like to be in a big group with lots of other PhD students, master students, and postdocs, or if you'd like to be in a small group where you are perhaps there's only one or two other researchers along with the supervisor. And that is a personal choice. There's no overall right or wrong answer. So, for example, for me, I probably work best in a small group. I like having small group interactions. Other people much prefer being in a big group where they're able to speak to lots of different people. So there's no right or wrong answer, but I do think it's worth thinking about that. And I don't think many people discuss that, but I think it's a good thing to sort of open up the question and decide early on. And then that helps you have a much better experience during your project. And this is also true for going forward for a PhD. So we have another question. Um, Would it be helpful in application if a student already has a potential supervisor that has agreed to provide a project? Um, yeah, there's no problem if you have got that. If the project supervisor, you've already spoken to them and they have agreed to that, um, then yes, put that down in your cover letter and highlight that. That helps us determine your fit to the program, but it's not necessary. It's fine if you have organized it. Not everybody will be able to get that um, because many supervisors will only agree to take on a master's student once the master's student has arrived. They might not know if they will have room in their lab. Perhaps the number of students and postdocs has actually sort of reached a critical number where there's no more space in the lab at the lab bench to actually take on any more people. And they might not know that until September. So I think there's no, most of our students will discuss with the tutor once they arrive. I'd say probably 9 out of 10 students, at a guess, will be organising their project once they arrive, and only a few will already have a project organised before that time. And that's because there's so many supervisors that are potentially good supervisors that we help you through that process, and that's best done when you arrive. So moving on then, it's got a question. I would like to inquire whether I can enhance my chances of a successful application with my academic performance, research projects, and research papers. Um, Given the comprehensive strength of the undergraduate institution I attended is not particularly strong. So the short answer is yes. We're looking for students with high academic performance, evidence that they've already done some research, usually in an undergraduate research project, but also potentially in internships. If you've produced or you're involved in research papers already, that's really good information to have and will help with your application. So all of those things you mentioned are good things to make stand out on your application. Okay, so Chloe, there's a question from Chloe. During the application process, a cover letter and a brief about the topic research are required. What is the preferred length of the letter and how in-depth should the content be? Okay, thanks, Chloe. So it's tricky to pin it down exactly, but I think what you should do is make it clear what sorts of topics you're interested in and what you would consider to be interesting research projects. And really, you should keep this to like maybe a page or so on a Word document, that sort of length of a standard page. So the point is, don't try and cram in. If you're trying to cram in extra information, if you're reducing the font size or you find yourself doing multiple pages, you're almost certainly trying to give us too much information. And actually, the probably you risk drowning out the key information with other things. So write it, have a go, draft out your cover letter. Perhaps you might be able to find a professor that might, your tutor, perhaps if you've got a personal tutor at your university, might be able to give you some feedback. And also, maybe you could ask a colleague, another student, to look at it to see if it makes everything stands out very easily. Because again, we're dealing with large numbers of applications, and this is true. This is not just for this program, this is true for all applications. You want your information to stand out very clearly so we don't have to work hard to find what the key information is. So the key bits are what's the most relevant to um, the potential research project that you're interested in. So that won't be going back to lots of, things that you did necessarily when you're a child. It will usually be what you've been doing for research experience in the last 2 or 3 years. So another question from Yumin. How long will it take for a student to be invited to interview after the application is submitted? That if once you've sent off your application, it'll probably take it will take a few weeks before the tutors get hold of it, and that's because the university has to run lots of checks to make sure that your application details are correct and that you are coming from a university that you're saying you are and things like that, and to make sure that all the things are in place. And sometimes we have to wait for referees to submit their reference. So that can take a lot of it will depend on if you've put all the correct information in, and also it depends on how long your referees take to respond. So that can take 2, 3, 4 weeks, sometimes longer if the referees are really slow. And then we will get hold of it, and usually within 1 or 2 weeks of uh, having it available to us, we will make a decision, and then you'll be contacted to organise an online discussion about your research experience and why you'd like to do the MRes program. Another question I have is, would a national level biological award serve as an advantage during the application process for non-native English speakers? That will those with English test scores above the baseline be given priority? Additionally, how can one seek professional assistance when applying to the institution? Um, so any national level awards are good to highlight. Um, we do have requirements for English language, and there are a number of different tests that can be undertaken. And if you look at the requirements on the UCL pages, you'll see the minimum required. And that's a simple threshold for us. So we require you to pass those. We will make offers of a place on the MRes program, but you still have to take the tests to make sure that you pass. And so at that point, it's possible to be made an offer, but you don't pass those English test scores. So it's important that if you need to, you make sure you apply for those and you test those, pass those tests, as well as get the minimum grade requirements in your degree. So those are still requirements, even if you are made an offer. It will be a conditional offer. It will be conditional on you obtaining the English test scores that are required, and also the minimum scores in your undergraduate degree if you have not finished that as yet. And then the final bit asks about professional assistance. I think in this case, if I understand the question correctly, then I think that's where talking to perhaps your current project supervisor, in your degree, perhaps, or your personal tutor, if you have one, who's also an academic, would be very useful because they are used to looking at cover letters and CVs from students like you, and they can give you some feedback, which can be quite quick and easy for them to do, which often involves, actually telling you to try and reduce the number of words but retain the amount of information. So it's worth spending time on to do that. And again, it's helpful to us. Okay, so are there any more questions? Well, if anybody goes away after today and thinks of another question, then you can contact me, or the administrator for the Biosciences program, and those details for those email addresses will both be available on the website with the with this QR code here. You'll be able to link to that. Ian's kindly put it into the chat for the admissions. So this goes to our admissions administrator, and we'll be able to deal with questions. Either they'll get back to you or they'll pass your question on to me, and I'll give a direct question. So hopefully we've covered all the questions you're interested in asking, but if there's anything additional about the program, then we're happy to answer those questions at a later time.